He deleted the same message every night. At first, I thought it was nothing. Just a quick glance at his phone, a pause, and then it disappeared. No notification. No trace. I asked him once. He said it was work. Something unimportant. And the way he said it made it easy to let go.
So I did.
Until I noticed something I couldn't ignore.
It was always at the same time.
Every night. Like a routine. That's when it stopped feeling random. So one night, I didn't check his phone. I didn't ask questions. I waited until he fell asleep, and I checked something he never thought I would. The phone bill. And what I found there wasn't just one message. It was a pattern. And once I saw it, I knew this had been going on a lot longer than I thought. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 now, and at the time all of this happened, I had been married for a little over 4 years. From the outside, our life looked stable. Not perfect, but steady in a way that people don't usually question. My husband, Mark, worked long hours, and I had my own routine, my own responsibilities, and we had settled into something that felt predictable. And for a long time, I thought predictable meant safe. Mark wasn't the type of person who drew attention. He was quiet, organized, and very consistent with how he lived his life. Same schedule, same habits, same patterns. At the time, I saw that as reliability. Now I understand it differently. But back then, it made everything feel easy. We didn't argue much. There were no major problems. No dramatic moments that would make you question the relationship. If anything, things had become calm in a way that felt normal after a few years of marriage. We had routines. Dinner around the same time. Evenings spent in the same space, sometimes talking, sometimes just doing our own things. It wasn't exciting, but it felt stable. And I trusted that stability. I didn't feel the need to check things or question anything. That's not how our relationship had ever been. I trusted him.
Completely.
And he gave me no obvious reason not to. He was present.
He came home when he said he would.
He kept things running smoothly. And that kind of consistency builds a certain kind of confidence. The kind where you stop looking for problems. You assume things are fine because they've always been fine. Looking back, that's probably why I didn't notice the shift right away. Because it didn't come as a big change. It was small,
subtle,
easy to overlook. At first, it was just his phone. Not in a dramatic way. He had always been somewhat private with it, but nothing that stood out as unusual. Everyone has their own space. I respected that. But over time, I noticed he became more aware of it. Not hiding it, just keeping track of it more closely. If he left the room, it went with him. If it buzzed, he checked it quickly. If I was nearby, he angled it slightly away. At the time, those things didn't feel like warning signs. They felt like habits. And habits are easy to ignore. Because they don't interrupt anything. They just sit in the background. There were also small changes in timing. He would step away in the evenings more often. Not for long. Just a few minutes at a time. Saying he needed to respond to something or check something for work. And again, that made sense. His job required communication. It wasn't unusual. So, I didn't question it. I didn't think to. Because nothing about his behavior toward me had changed. He still spoke the same way. Still showed up the same way. Still moved through our routine without disruption. And when everything else stays consistent, it's easy to assume those small shifts don't mean anything. I remember one evening in particular. We were sitting in the living room, not really doing anything, just existing in the same space the way we usually did.
His phone buzzed.
He picked it up, looked at it, paused for a second, and then the screen went dark. He put it down like nothing had happened. The moment was so small it barely registered. But something about the pause stayed with me. It felt slightly longer than it should have been. Like he was deciding something. I didn't say anything.
I didn't ask.
Because there was no reason to. It didn't fit into anything that would make it suspicious. So I let it go. And moments like that continued. Not often enough to stand out on their own. Just enough to exist. A pause here. A quick check there. A slight shift in attention. And every time, I told myself the same thing. It's nothing. You're overthinking it. Because everything else still felt the same. The relationship hadn't changed. The routine hadn't changed. He hadn't given me a clear reason to question anything. And when you don't have a clear reason, you don't go looking for one. You stay where things feel comfortable, where things make sense. That's what I did. I stayed in that version of things. The one where everything was still stable. The one where nothing needed to be questioned. Until the pattern became just clear enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore. The first time I noticed it, I didn't think much of it. It was just a message. His phone buzzed while we were sitting together, and like always, he picked it up without saying anything. He looked at the screen, paused for a second, and then it disappeared. No reply. No follow-up. Just gone. And then he went back to what he was doing like nothing had happened. At the time, it didn't feel important. It was too small to question. Too normal to interrupt anything. But I remembered it. Not consciously. Just somewhere in the background. Later that night, I asked him about it. Not seriously. Just casually, like it didn't matter. What was that message earlier? He didn't hesitate. Didn't shift his tone. Work. That was it. Then he added something about it not being important. Something that didn't need attention. And the way he said it made it easy to accept. So I did. Because there was no reason not to. The next night it happened again. Same time. Same pattern. The phone buzzed. He picked it up. Looked at it. Paused. And then it was gone. That was the moment I noticed the timing. It wasn't random. It wasn't scattered throughout the day. It was specific. Late evening. Almost the same window as the night before. I didn't say anything. I didn't react. But I didn't ignore it either. I just noticed. The third night, it happened again. And that's when it stopped feeling like coincidence. Because 3 times isn't random. 3 times is a pattern. I remember sitting there, pretending to focus on something else, but my attention was on him. Not directly. Just enough to observe. And that's when I noticed something different. It wasn't just that he was checking the message. It was the way he handled it. Carefully. Like there was a step involved. Look. Pause. Remove. Return to normal. Every time. No variation. No hesitation. That kind of consistency doesn't happen by accident. But even then, I didn't confront him. Because I didn't have anything solid. Just repetition. And repetition alone isn't enough to start a conversation like that. So I let it continue. Night after night. Same time. Same behavior. And the more it repeated, the more aware I became of it. I started anticipating it, not because I wanted to, but because it had become predictable. Around the same time every evening, I would notice myself paying attention, waiting without meaning to. And every time it happened, exactly the same way. That's when I tried something different. I stopped asking questions completely. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't react when it happened. I just watched. And once I stopped reacting, I started seeing more. Small things. Details that didn't stand out before. The way he would slightly turn his body when checking his phone. Not dramatically. Just enough. The way his attention shifted for those few seconds. Then reset immediately after. Like nothing had interrupted him. It was controlled. That was the word that kept coming back. Controlled. Everything about it felt practiced. And that's what made it different. Because people don't practice something that doesn't matter. A few nights later, I tested something. When the message came in, I got up and walked closer. Not directly toward him, just into the same space. And I saw it more clearly. He wasn't just opening the message. He was deleting it. Immediately. No reading and leaving it there. No saving it for later. Just removing it. And that changed everything. Because ignoring a message is normal. Deleting it instantly. Every single night. Isn't. That was the moment the situation shifted for me. Not emotionally. Just logically. Because now there was a reason to question it. Still, I didn't confront him. Because I knew how that would go. He would explain it,
minimize it,
turn it into something small. And without proof, I would have nothing to stand on. So instead, I let it continue. I kept watching, kept noticing. And the more I did, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. This wasn't occasional. This was a routine. And routines are built over time, which meant this had been happening longer than I had realized. That thought stayed with me. Not loudly,
not constantly,
but enough to change how I saw things. Because once you recognize a pattern like that, you don't go back to ignoring it. You start asking different questions. Not out loud, but internally. What is he deleting? Why only at that time? And why does it never stay on the phone? And the more those questions stayed with me, the more one thing became clear. If I wanted answers, I wasn't going to get them from him, because whatever those messages were, they weren't meant to exist long enough to be seen twice. Once I understood it was a pattern, everything started to feel different. Not louder, not more obvious, just clearer. I stopped looking at it as something occasional and started seeing it as something structured, because the timing never changed. The behavior never changed. And that level of consistency doesn't happen without a reason. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions, because I already knew what the answer would be. It would be simple, dismissive, something easy to accept if I wanted to. So instead, I paid attention to everything around it, not just the message, but what happened before and what happened after. I started noticing how his evenings were built around it, how he stayed relaxed until a certain time, then slightly more aware, like he was expecting something. Not anxious, just prepared. That was the part that stood out. Expectation. Because you don't expect something unless it's predictable. And this clearly was. A few nights later, I paid closer attention to the exact time. Not guessing, actually watching. And it was almost exact. Within the same few minutes every night. That made it feel less like communication and more like coordination. Like both sides knew when it would happen. That thought stayed with me longer than anything else,
because it changed how I saw the situation.
This wasn't random contact. This was planned. After that, I started noticing other details. During the day, his phone would sit normally, face up, unbothered. Nothing unusual.
But in the evening, that changed.
He kept it closer, checked it more often. Not constantly, just enough to stay aware of it. And when that time approached, his attention shifted slightly. Not enough for someone else to notice, but enough for me, because I was already looking for it. That's when I realized something else. He wasn't reacting to the message. He was waiting for it. And that changed everything, because it meant the message wasn't the start of something. It was part of something ongoing, something already in motion. I didn't say anything. I didn't interrupt it. I just let it continue, because the more it continued, the more it revealed. Patterns don't stay hidden when you watch them long enough. They repeat, and repetition creates clarity. A few days later, I started thinking about something I hadn't considered before. If the message disappears every night, then whatever is happening has to exist somewhere else. Because communication doesn't just vanish. It moves.
It shifts.
It leaves traces in other places. That thought stayed with me, because it meant I had been looking in the wrong place. I had been focused on the phone itself, on what I could see. But what I could see was being controlled, removed, managed. So the answer wouldn't be there. It would be somewhere else. That's when I started paying attention to what didn't change, instead of what did. The phone bill, the account, the records that don't disappear just because someone deletes something. I didn't check it right away. I waited, because I wanted to be sure. Not emotionally, just logically. I wanted to know that this wasn't just suspicion, that there was something consistent enough to follow. And by that point there was, every night,
same time,
same behavior, same deletion, no variation, no gaps. That level of consistency leaves a trail. It has to. And once I understood that, everything became simple. I stopped trying to catch the moment, stopped trying to see the message itself, because that part was already controlled. Instead, I started focusing on what couldn't be controlled, what couldn't be erased in a few seconds. Because if something is happening that regularly, it exists somewhere, even if it's not visible at first. That was the shift. Not emotional, not reactive, just strategic. Because now I wasn't trying to figure out if something was wrong. I already knew something was. Now I was figuring out how to prove it. And once that became the focus, there was only one question left. If the messages don't stay on his phone, then where do they go? Once I realized the answer wasn't on his phone, I stopped looking there completely. Because that part was controlled, managed, deleted before it could exist long enough to matter. So, I shifted my attention somewhere else. Something he didn't think about. Something most people don't think about. The phone bill. I didn't check it right away. I waited a few days. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to see the pattern clearly before I went looking for proof. And the pattern didn't change. Every night, same time, same message, same deletion. That consistency gave me something to follow. So one evening, when he was in the shower, I opened the account. Not quickly, not nervously, just calmly. Because by that point, this wasn't emotional anymore. It was logical. I logged in and went straight to the usage details. Calls, texts, numbers, timestamps. Everything laid out without interpretation. At first, it just looked like data. Rows of numbers. Times. Nothing that stood out immediately. But then I narrowed it down. Evenings. Same time window. And that's when I saw it. One number. Repeated. Every night. Within the exact same time frame I had been noticing. Not once or twice. Every night. Consistent. Precise. Like it had its own place in his schedule. I stared at it for a few seconds. Not surprised. Just confirmed. Because seeing it there removed any doubt. This wasn't random. This wasn't occasional. This was routine. And routines don't happen without intention. I opened more details. Scrolled back. Days. Weeks. And it didn't stop. The same number kept appearing. At the same time. With the same pattern. Message sent. Message received. Every single night. That's when something else became clear. This hadn't started recently. This had been going on for a long time. Long enough to be normal for him. Long enough that he didn't think it would ever be questioned. I didn't react. I didn't rush to conclusions beyond what was already there. I just kept looking. Because once you find something like that, you don't stop at the first confirmation. You follow it. I checked call logs. Nothing. Only messages. Which made sense. Calls leave more trace. Messages can be controlled more easily. Deleted quickly. Hidden in real time. But not from records. And that was the mistake. Not mine. His. Because no matter how carefully something is managed in the moment, there's always a version of it that stays somewhere else. That was the version I was looking at. And it was clear. Consistent communication. Same number. Same time. No gaps. No variation. That's not casual. That's intentional. That's ongoing. I wrote the number down. Didn't save it. Didn't call it. Just noted it. Because I wasn't ready to act yet. I wanted to understand it fully, not just react to it. Over the next few days, I checked again. Not obsessively. Just enough to confirm that nothing had changed. And it hadn't. Every night. Same pattern. Same number. Same time. That level of consistency doesn't allow for doubt. It removes it completely. By that point, I didn't need to guess anymore. I didn't need to question what it meant. I already knew. But knowing and proving are different things. And I wanted both. So I waited a little longer. Not because I needed more evidence, but because I wanted to be certain of how I was going to handle it.
Because once I said something,
Once I brought it into the open,
there was no going back to not knowing.
and I didn't want a reaction. I wanted clarity, so I kept watching, kept confirming, kept letting the pattern continue exactly as it had been. Because the longer it continued,
The stronger it became.
and the harder it would be for anyone to deny it. By the time I was ready, I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't assuming. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I had something clear, something structured, something undeniable. And that changed everything. Because now it wasn't about what I thought was happening. It was about what I could show. And once I had that, there was only one thing left to decide: when to say something, and how to say it in a way that couldn't be dismissed. By the time I had everything in front of me, I wasn't emotional about it anymore. That part had already passed. What was left was clarity. And once you reach that point, you don't rush. You decide how you want things to unfold. I didn't confront him right away. I waited a couple more days. Let everything continue exactly as it had been. Same messages,
Same time.
same deletion. Because I wanted him to stay comfortable, unaware. That mattered. Because people reveal more when they think nothing has changed. And I needed that moment to stay exactly the way it always had. So when the night came, I didn't do anything differently. We sat in the living room like usual. Same routine. Same quiet conversation. Nothing out of place. And right on time, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, looked at it,
Paused.
and then it disappeared. Exactly like every other night. That was the moment. I didn't react immediately. I let a few seconds pass. Let him settle back into his normal behavior. And then I asked, what was that message? Same question as before. Same tone.
Come.
Unforced. He didn't hesitate. Work.
Just like last time.
Same answer. Same delivery. And that confirmed something else. He thought this was still working. That nothing had changed. That I was still accepting it. I nodded slightly, like it made sense, like I believed it. And then I said, can you show me? That was new. That wasn't part of the routine. And for the first time, there was a shift. Small. But there. He didn't move right away. Didn't reach for his phone. Just looked at me, trying to understand the question. It's gone now. That was his response. Simple. Controlled. But different from before. Because now there was something to avoid. I kept my tone the same. Then it shouldn't be a problem. No accusation. No emotion.
Just a statement.
And that's when the pause got longer. He didn't argue. Didn't raise his voice. But he didn't move either. And that hesitation said more than anything else. Because if it was nothing, there would be no reason to hesitate. After a few seconds, he picked up his phone, unlocked it, scrolled briefly, then turned the screen toward me. There's nothing there. And he was right. There wasn't, because it had already been deleted. Exactly like every other night. I looked at the screen for a moment, then back at him. And that's when I reached for my own phone. Not quickly, not dramatically, just calmly. I opened the account, the phone bill, and turned it toward him the same way. Same position, same distance. And I said, it's here. That was it. No explanation. No build-up. Just the truth.
For a second, he didn't react.
Then his eyes shifted. From the screen.
To me.
And back again. And that was the moment everything changed. Because now it wasn't something he could control. It wasn't something he could delete. It wasn't something that disappeared after a few seconds. It was there.
Consistent.
Recorded. Undeniable. He didn't speak right away. And that silence confirmed everything. Because up until that moment, he always had an answer. Always had something ready.
But not now.
I didn't push. I didn't fill the silence. I let it stay. Because it mattered. Because once someone has nothing to say, the truth is already clear. After a few seconds, he said something about it being nothing, something about work again. But it didn't carry the same weight, because it didn't match what was in front of us anymore. I didn't argue. I didn't correct him. I just left the screen there, because I didn't need to say anything else. Everything that needed to be said was already visible. The number, the timing, the consistency. Every night,
Same pattern.
same behavior. And he knew I could see all of it. That was the shift. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Because once something is that clear, there's no version of the story that can replace it. And for the first time, he wasn't controlling the situation anymore. I was. Not by raising my voice, not by forcing anything, just by letting the truth stay exactly where it was. And once that happened, there was nothing left to question. Only one thing left. What he was going to do now that it couldn't be hidden anymore. He didn't answer right away. And that silence told me more than anything he could have said. Because up until that moment, he always had something ready. An explanation. A reason. Something simple enough to move past. But now, there was nothing left to adjust. Nothing left to remove. The pattern was there. Clear. And he knew I could see it. He leaned back slightly like he needed a second to think. Then he said it wasn't what it looked like. That it was work-related. That it was easier to delete messages than deal with unnecessary conversations. It was calm, measured, almost convincing. If I hadn't already seen everything. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't correct him. I just listened. Because I wasn't trying to argue. I wasn't trying to win anything. I just needed to see how far he would go to maintain it. And he kept going. Different explanations. Small adjustments to the same story. Trying to make it fit. But none of it matched what was in front of me. And that's the thing about truth. Once it's clear, you don't need to fight for it. It stands on its own. After a while, he stopped talking. Not because he was done, but because there was nothing left that worked. And that's when the room went quiet again. This time differently. Not uncertain. Just settled. I picked up my phone and closed the screen. Not because I was done looking at it, but because I didn't need it anymore. Everything I needed to understand was already there. I looked at him, not waiting for anything, not expecting anything, just seeing him clearly for the first time. And that's when something shifted in me. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just a quiet realization. This wasn't about the messages anymore. It wasn't even about who was on the other side of them. It was about the fact that it had been happening consistently, right in front of me. And he had chosen to manage it instead of being honest. That was the part that mattered. Not the details, not the explanations, just the choice. And once I understood that, there wasn't really anything left to fix. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't ask how long, because the pattern already answered that. Every night, same time, no gaps. That tells you everything you need to know. I stood up, not abruptly, just calmly. And he looked at me like he expected something. A reaction, a question, an argument. But I didn't give him any of that. Because I wasn't there anymore. Not in the way I had been before. I walked into the bedroom and sat down for a while, not thinking about what to say next, just letting everything settle. Because once something becomes that clear, your next step isn't confusion, it's decision. Over the next few days, nothing dramatic happened. No big confrontation. No loud arguments. Just distance. Quiet. Intentional distance. He tried to talk. A few times. Same explanations. Same tone. But I didn't engage with it. Because I wasn't trying to understand his version anymore. I had already seen the structure of it. And that was enough. I stopped asking questions. Stopped looking for clarity. Stopped expecting honesty to suddenly appear. Because it doesn't work like that. If something has been managed for that long, it doesn't change overnight. So I focused on something else. Myself.
My space.
My next step. I started separating things slowly. Not in a way that caused tension, just in a way that created distance. And over time that distance became clear. I moved out a few weeks later. No big moment. No final conversation. Just a decision that made sense. And once I left, everything felt quieter.
Not empty.
Not heavy. Just still. Like I wasn't constantly trying to understand something anymore. Like I wasn't waiting for something to make sense. Because it already did. I didn't need more answers. I didn't need more details. I didn't need to confirm anything else. The pattern had already said everything. I never found out who the number belonged to. And I didn't try to. Because it didn't matter. It wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't make the situation clearer. It was already clear. What mattered was the consistency.
The choice.
The fact that it happened every single night. And that he expected it to continue without question. That was enough. I still think about it sometimes. Not in a way that hurts. Just in a way that reminds me. Because that situation taught me something I didn't understand before. That sometimes the truth isn't hidden in big moments. It's in small patterns. Repeated quietly. Until you either notice them. Or you don't. And once you do, you don't need someone else to explain it to you. For me, that was the shift. Not finding out everything. Just understanding enough. And choosing not to stay in something that required me to ignore what I could already see. For the first time, I didn't need answers. I just needed to trust what was already there. Microphone OUDRO, 30 to 40 seconds. If you've ever had that feeling where something small keeps repeating and you can't explain why it bothers you, this story probably made sense to you. Sometimes it's not about one big moment. It's about patterns that don't change. And once you see them clearly, you don't need anyone else to confirm what they mean. If this story felt familiar or made you think about something in your own life, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, there are more waiting for you right here.